The carpet was gray. Always gray. Always quiet beneath my dragging feet, like it understood the weight I carried but never dared to speak on it. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead buzzed like a second heartbeat, steady, soulless, artificial. I walked to the printer like I always did. Same time. Same route. Same limp in my step that wasn't physical, just the wear of repetition. This was my life now. Stapling packets. Answering emails. Filing reports until the sun had risen and set again without me once stepping into it. I barely saw my wife. My son's laugh felt like something from a dream I once had but forgot how to wake into. I didn't hate my life. That would have been easier. I was just unsure if I was living it. Somewhere deep inside me, in that quiet place I didn't share with anyone, I carried a question that had grown too loud to ignore. Is this all God had planned for me? Was I really meant to sit behind a desk for the next 40 years, waiting to die with a retirement plan and a calendar full of missed moments? Up ahead, near the break room, I heard voices, a few co-workers chatting between sips of coffee and bites of stale donuts. I wouldn't have cared, except I caught a phrase that sliced through the fog in my mind. The mountain that sees God. I slowed. One of them, a man I barely spoke to, said, "My brother went. Came back different. Started a business and never looked back." Another chimed in, "Yeah, my sister and her husband climbed it too. Now they write Christian books like real ones. Bestsellers." Their laughter echoed like bells in a chapel I hadn't prayed in for years. I stood at the printer, hand resting on the stack of warm paper as the machine finished its mechanical sigh. But my body wasn't there. My mind was already gone, climbing, becoming, burning with purpose. I could see myself standing at the foot of something vast. Something holy. Something that called me. Then, "Can you grab your paper and get to work?" My boss. Voice sharp, impatient. I blinked, nodded, took the papers in hand and walked back to my cubicle like nothing had happened. But everything had. Because in that moment, something old inside me stirred. The void I'd carried for years, the hollow ache of wasted time and silent prayers, had the more I thought about it, the more it devoured me. Not all at once. Not like a flame. No, this burned slow like ice pressed into the back of the skull. Quiet. Relentless. Even as I ate dinner with my family, I could feel it chewing at the edges of my thoughts. My son reached for his spoon with messy hands. I wiped his face, laughed when he grinned. My wife touched my wrist under the table. Familiar warmth. Well, a life I had asked for. And yet, it felt like I was holding it all from behind glass. I carried my son to bed that night, small arms wrapped around my neck like he trusted me with the whole world. I kissed my wife under soft kitchen lights. Her lips were real. Her skin warm. Her eyes tired, but still full of belief. Still, I wasn't really there. Because something else was calling me. Something I couldn't ignore anymore. Not ambition. Not madness. The mountain. Or maybe not the mountain at all. Maybe it was God, and the mountain was just his mouthpiece. Whatever it was, I felt it pulling me. Each time I blinked, it filled the darkness behind my eyes. Each time I exhaled, it filled the silence I left behind. And the longer I resisted, the more I began to fear this truth. If I didn't answer the call, I would never know peace again. Been filled with a spark. Not noise. Not noise at all. Direction. And in that direction, I heard a whisper I hadn't felt in a long, long time. God. He was calling me. And I would answer. It took me weeks to say it out loud. Not because I was afraid of her reaction, but because I wasn't sure how to say it without sounding ungrateful. How do you tell the woman who gave you everything that it's not enough? Not because of her, but because of the ache inside your own soul? We sat on the couch. The TV played something neither of us were watching. Our son was asleep. The house was quiet. "I think I have to go," I said. She didn't flinch. Didn't cry. Just looked at me for a long time, then nodded. "You've always carried something," she whispered. "Just promise me something. Anything. Don't chase that feeling for the rest of your life. Don't let it eat you." I promised. Because I meant it. Because I wanted to mean it. But even as I said the words, I felt the lie catch in the back of my throat. For months before I told her, I had worn the mask well. Smiling through dinner. Laughing when I didn't feel like it. Playing with my son while my mind wandered somewhere far off. Somewhere colder, higher, holier. I never stopped loving them. God knows I didn't. But love started to feel like a performance. A set of motions I carried out with reverence, even as my soul rehearsed something else entirely. At night, I would lie beside her, her head against my shoulder, and stare at the ceiling like it held a secret I hadn't been worthy enough to learn. She'd ask if I was okay. I'd smile. But my smile was just a mask built to hold her together while I quietly fell apart. He stood in the doorway, boots laced tight, pack slung over one shoulder. There was no wind. No birds. Just a silence that asked questions he wasn't ready to answer. The boy slept in the next room, small hands curled like he still trusted the world. The man had rehearsed this moment for weeks, maybe years. He was about to leave everything he had asked God for. But now that the hour had come, the weight of it pressed against his chest. She stood in the kitchen, robe wrapped tight, watching him without speaking. She knew this was coming. She'd seen the distance in his eyes, the way he stared at walls like they were windows to something beyond this life. "I packed you extra socks," she said softly, her voice cracking like glass beneath water. He gave a smile half real. "You always take care of the things I forget." She nodded, then added, "Promise me this won't be forever." "I promise." But both of them knew promises like that were made from paper. 4 months, he had worn the mask well, smiling through meals, laughing at bedtime, carrying his son like a man who was fully present. But inside he was already gone. Already climbing. Already sacrificing. He loved them. He loved them so deeply it made him ache. But he had started to love the voice in the silence more. Or maybe not love it, just obey it. At night, he would lie beside her with eyes open to the dark, waiting for God to explain why peace felt so unbearable. She would ask if he was okay. He would smile. But the smile was a veil, a lie stitched in love. And now it was time. He kissed her forehead, touched her cheek. She trembled but didn't beg. "Don't lose yourself," she whispered. "I don't think I have a self left," he replied. The door opened. The morning greeted him like a grave. He stepped into it. The sky above was vast and indifferent. Behind him the house exhaled. Then the door closed. He walked on nameless. Because names belong to men with homes. And he no longer had one. The mountain rose like a wound in the earth, so high, so brutal, it seemed the planet could barely contain it. A jagged spine that tore not only through the clouds but through heaven itself. No maps marked it. No roads led to it. It simply was, a silent sentinel that had watched for ages, waiting for someone foolish or faithful enough to climb it. It was 30 degrees below zero. Wind howled like lost souls had made a home in its frozen ribs. The cold cut through everything, my coat, my skin, my lungs. But inside me a fire burned. Hotter than fear. Hotter than frostbite. I wasn't here to survive. I was here to meet God. To ascend through suffering and speak with the one who placed this hunger in me. To ask why the world felt so small when I tried to live in it, and why peace had always tasted like punishment. Every step I took was an act of worship. Every inch gained was a wordless prayer. I wasn't climbing for glory. I was climbing to be seen. The snow is heavy. It falls not like flakes but like ash, weightless yet unrelenting. Every step I take feels like dragging a grave behind me. My boots sink deep. I lift one foot, then the next. Inch by inch. Breath by breath. My progress is invisible to anyone but me. I am alone. And in the dark, I cannot tell if I am halfway up the mountain or still at its base. There is no visibility. The wind blinds me, howls through the canyons like wolves made of wind and teeth. My hands are numb. My face is cracked. I haven't eaten in 2 days. I haven't rested in 3. But rest feels like betrayal. Like surrender. And I didn't come here to surrender. I came here to find God. But God is quiet. The mountain does not let him sleep. Feed. Night comes with no warning. Just more cold. More black. I dig a trench in the snow with what little strength I have left and bury myself beneath it like a corpse in waiting. I curl into the mountain's silence and listen for him. But what finds me first isn't God. It's memory. It begins with warmth. A small boy, mine I think, laughing in a bathtub. Bubbles in his hair. He asks me to be the sea monster. I pretend to growl. He shrieks with joy. My wife laughs from the hallway. I remember this. But something's wrong. I can't picture his face. His laughter is clear, but when I try to see him, truly see him, his head is turned. Or blurred. Or gone. Then another memory, the porch. Her hands around a coffee mug. She says something soft, something about me coming home early. Her mouth moves. But no sound. Her eyes blink. But I don't recognize them. I sit up in the snow. My chest heaves. Not from cold. From fear. I am forgetting. The mountain is taking names now. Faces. Intimacies. They vanish like footprints behind me, erased with every step forward. The climb isn't just costing me my body. It's costing me everything I love. The wind howled past like the breath of angels exiled from heaven. Then came the voice. Small. Familiar. Piercing through the storm like a bell underwater. Daddy, are you almost done climbing? He snapped awake, or maybe he never slept. The voice was soft, like a blanket being pulled over his soul. It didn't belong here. Not on this cursed incline where time lost meaning. Not in this void of breathless cold. You said you'd be home after your mission, the child's voice continued. I've been waiting. Mommy said you'd come back when you find what you're looking for. Tears poured from his eyes and froze there, shattered into crystals along his cheeks. He shut his eyes. I'm close, he whispered aloud. I'm so close. But he wasn't speaking to his son. He was speaking to the mountain. And the mountain said nothing. His hand shook as he reached into his jacket and pulled out the last photo he owned. It was half-faded now, creased 100 times from nights spent opening and folding it like a sacred text. There they were. His wife. Her smile dim but true. His son, missing a front tooth, waving with a hand far too small to belong to someone forgotten. But the faces swam, shifted, bled together in the wind's vibration. What's your name? The boy asked again, but the voice had changed. It cracked at the edges, growing older with every syllable. He blinked. His son had aged? No, it wasn't possible. But when he looked again, the child in the photo was no longer 6. He was older, 10, maybe 11. A teenager? His shoulders broader. His smile tighter. I waited, Dad. I waited for years. The hallucination twisted. His wife appeared next to the boy, but her eyes were hollow. Her mouth didn't move. She simply stared. Accusing. Or mourning. He screamed. But it came out as a wheeze. A cough. A sound too small for the agony inside. He dropped the photo into the snow. The wind took it. No ceremony. No goodbye. Just gone. You took them, he rasped at the summit. He pressed his palms into the ground and felt nothing. You told me this was the path. No answer. Only snow. Only silence. Only the voice still echoing. Are you almost done climbing? The mountain does not let him sleep. Feet. Stood at the top. Not with his arms raised, not with a shout of victory, but bent, broken, and trembling. The summit wasn't a crown, it was a grave. There was no choir of angels. No sunlight parting the clouds. No voice from the heavens confirming his purpose. Just wind. Soft. Mocking. The clouds hung low like rotting curtains, and the sky refused to look down. The frost had long claimed his toes. His fingers were gone too, wrapped in bandages that now stuck to bone and blood like old regrets. Every breath burned like prayer turned punishment. Every heartbeat was a question unanswered. He fell to his knees. And waited. Waited for God to speak. But the mountain, like heaven, remained silent. I'm here, he whispered. I made it. I gave everything. Why won't you say something? No reply. Not even wind this time. He looked out, searching for a sign. But there was no vision. No dream. No epiphany. Just emptiness. White. Cold. Unmoving. What am I doing here? He muttered. Why am I here? A sob clawed its way up his throat. Where is my family? My son? My wife? He tried to remember their faces, but all that came was snow. His knees scraped on stone as he stood. His body wanted to die here. But his soul wasn't ready to let go. He had to climb back down. Not because he wanted to, but because he had nowhere else to go. I have to go now, he whispered to the silence. There's nothing here. And then, almost begging, God, don't be silent. I need your voice to guide me. But even that prayer was swallowed by the summit. The wind didn't answer. The mountain didn't care. And heaven? He wasn't sure it was even watching anymore. So he began his descent, limping, bleeding, weeping. And somewhere below the clouds, a child still waited by the window. And a woman still left the porch light on. The first step down wasn't a step. It was a collapse. His legs buckled like splintered wood beneath him, and he rolled, slowly, painfully, down a slope of ice and stone. When he finally came to a stop, his breath sounded like fire cracking through ash. The summit was behind him now. But not really. It had followed him. It had entered him. The mountain was in his bones, in his lungs, in his silence. He tried to pray, but his lips couldn't shape the words anymore. Not from cold. From confusion. Had he passed the test? Had he failed? Was it ever a test at all? He dragged his body over snow as smooth as marble. His knees scraped red against jagged rock. His breath was a rattle, his eyes glassed in frost. The same God he had climbed for, bled for, had stayed silent. And now the silence echoed within. He reached into his coat for the photograph. His wife. His son. His name? Gone. The paper had dissolved in his sweat long ago, just like the names, the memories, the purpose. Only one question remained. Why didn't God speak? A storm began to rise again. Not as fierce but meaner, mocking. It hissed through broken teeth of wind-scoured stone. He found a crevice, pulled himself inside, and pressed his back against ice as hard as armor. And then he heard it. Not a whisper. Not a hallucination. A memory. Come home to us. Please. His wife's voice. Gentle but not begging. Not anymore. She had stopped pleading years ago, hadn't she? He wept, only to feel the tears freeze before they could fall. I wanted to come home, he murmured to the dark. I just had to finish what he started. But what if he never started anything? What if the mountain wasn't divine? What if the climb wasn't holy? What if the silence wasn't a punishment? But the answer? He closed his eyes. And for a moment he saw a different version of himself, still at the office, still stapling papers but smiling. Holding his son. Kissing his wife's forehead. And behind them, no mountain. Just life. Just love. Then the image faded like smoke in wind. He crawled forward. The descent had only begun. He stumbled down the mountain like a prophet stripped of his visions. Each step broke something deeper inside, a toe that no longer bent, a tendon that snapped in silence, a rib that shifted like a blade beneath his skin. Yet none of it compared to the pain that throbbed behind his eyes. The pain of knowing he had reached the summit, and found nothing waiting. No voice. No light. No God. Just wind and ice and silence. By the time his boots touched dirt again, his body was barely a container. A shell filled with questions. His fingers were gone, blackened nubs wrapped in blood-stained cloth. His face was wind-burned, unrecognizable. Even his voice had changed, eroded from weeks of screaming prayers into the cold with no answer. Still, he remembered the way home. When he reached the edge of town, children stopped playing. Their laughter died on the wind. Doors shut slowly. Curtains moved. He walked like a man carrying death in his shadow. The path had become unfamiliar. Not because the streets had changed, but because he had. The light posts looked like crosses now. The sidewalks like graves waiting for names. And the people? They didn't recognize him. Children once known for waving at every passerby now froze mid-laugh. One clutched a ball to his chest and whispered something to his sister. She stepped back. Curtains shut. Screen doors creaked closed. The sound of life grew faint around him, like a tide pulling away from shore. He paused in front of a barbershop mirror, cracked, sun-faded. The reflection that met him wasn't human. It was bone beneath windburn. Hollow eyes set deep in a gaunt face. Lips cracked open in a dry attempt at something between a smile and a grimace. Even he wasn't sure what expression he made anymore. He looked like a man who had died somewhere up there, and only the ghost made it down. His limbs were uneven now. His gait disjointed. One foot dragged slightly with each step. He caught a glimpse of his own shadow and flinched. It didn't walk right. It slithered. Twisted. It followed him not like a second self but like a silent accuser. Still he walked on. He passed the church where he once prayed. The bell tower was rusted now. The door had a new coat of paint. A new pastor must have taken his place. He didn't stop to look inside. He passed his old friend Michael's house. The pickup in the driveway was newer. Cleaner. There were children playing in the backyard. He remembered the laughs from years ago, back when barbecues filled summers and their dreams were simpler. He passed the old oak tree where he once carved their initials. He stopped. The carving was still there. But someone had etched over it. The letters were barely visible beneath the fresh cuts of another couple. Another story. His story had been buried. Forgotten. Replaced. The further he walked, the more the world seemed to prove a single truth. Nothing had waited for him. Not the town. Not the people. Not time. He stopped outside the house. Not because he wasn't sure it was the right one, but because he knew it was. The garden out front was overgrown. The porch light had been replaced. A new mailbox. A wind chime that hadn't been there before. Still, the crack on the front step was his doing. The squeaky hinge on the screen door. The discolored spot on the siding where his son once kicked a soccer ball every day after school. It was his house. But it was no longer his home. He stood there for a long time. Maybe minutes. Maybe an hour. The sky turned gold with evening. He raised a trembling hand to knock, but it froze in midair. What if they didn't remember him? What if they did and it was worse? Would his son run to him? Or hide behind his mother's skirt? Would his wife scream, or simply close the door? His breath hitched. His chest caved in like something caged was breaking free. God, if you're still with me, please, don't let me be a stranger to them. But no voice came. Only the soft tinkle of the wind chime, swaying gently, mocking him with its calm. Then finally he knocked. The door creaked open. The woman who answered wore his wife's face, but aged, hardened. Her beauty had deepened into something solemn, something tired. Her eyes were kind but distant, like she was seeing a ghost. She did not gasp. She did not fall into his arms. She simply looked at him the way someone looks at an old photo they forgot they once loved. "Can I help you?" The words carved holes into him. He tried to smile, but his mouth couldn't remember how. His voice cracked like a broken violin. "It's me." She blinked, looked him over. Her lips parted but no sound came. Then, "You're?" He nodded. "I came back. I finished it." She didn't embrace him. She didn't move. He looked past her to the hallway behind. A figure stood at the end of it, taller than he remembered. A teenager. The boy he once carried on his shoulders. His son. Their eyes met. And nothing passed between them. She recoiled, not in fear but confusion. A knife of guilt stabbed his chest as her eyes filled with something like grief. Not the grief of losing someone but the grief of losing them again. "I had his photo," she whispered. "You look nothing like him." A small head peeked out from behind her leg. A boy. Or a young man now. His son. The child he had left behind had grown taller than him. He opened his mouth to speak, to say something, anything, but no words came. His voice had climbed the mountain and never returned. His wife took a step back, the door still half open. "You were gone a long time," she said, as if explaining something to herself more than to him. "We thought you died. I waited. I prayed. But I had to keep going, for our son." The man who had once believed God called him to greatness stood beneath the awning of his old home like a beggar in a storm. "Did you find him?" she asked. "At the top?" He shook his head. "No." She nodded. Not in anger. Not in triumph. Just finality. He turned and walked away. No one stopped him. The true descent. Outside the world went on. People passed him in the streets like he was invisible. His neighbors, once his friends, nodded politely but didn't stop. His job was gone. His name, forgotten on rosters and payrolls. His son didn't call him Dad. They all had lived. He had only survived. Greatness, he realized, didn't require climbing the mountain. It required staying. Enduring the quiet love of routine. The holiness of presence. He had sacrificed everything for a purpose he assumed God gave him. But now, with blistered feet and an empty home, he finally asked, "Was it really you?" he whispered once into the void. "Or was it just me, dressing up my pride in your name?" He had imagined that obedience meant sacrifice. But maybe, just maybe, obedience meant presence. Maybe God hadn't called him to climb at all, but to stay. To endure the slow, mundane holiness of being a father. A husband. A man who stays when he could run. Now all he had left were stories that no one asked to hear. A body broken in the name of glory. A faith scorched down to silence. And a family he still loved, with all the pieces he had left. Words turned to steam and vanished before they reached my ears. "God," I whisper, teeth chattering, lips bleeding. "Please speak." Only the mountain answers. And the mountain does not care. He couldn't see more than a foot in front of him. Not that it mattered. By now he had lost all sense of direction. Whether he was still at the base of the mountain or miles above it, he didn't know. There were no markers. No trails. Just a swirl of white and wind and nothing. His hands were cracked open. His feet had gone numb. His body had stopped telling him what it needed. The hunger was gone. The thirst dulled. Only one thing remained. The climb. Each breath burned like glass. The wind screamed around him, constant, furious, blinding. It didn't feel natural. It sounded like voices layered on top of each other, chanting, laughing, crying. He tried to cover his ears, but the noise came from inside now. Inside his chest, his skull, his thoughts. He dropped to his knees. Snow welcomed him like a coffin would. "I'm still climbing," he whispered to himself over and over. "I'm still climbing." Then something changed. The wind died all at once. Not gradually, just stopped. Like someone had muted the world. He stood. Silence stretched in every direction. A different kind of silence than before, thicker like it had weight. And then he saw it. Just ahead. Barely visible through the snow, a structure. Not made by nature. A shrine maybe. Or an altar. Stone. Cracked. Covered in frost and symbols he couldn't understand. No doors. Just an opening, dark, low, pulsing with cold. He stepped inside. The air was still. No sound. No wind. Just breath and blood. And then, a voice. But not one he heard with his ears. It came through the walls. Through his chest. "You've come far." He looked around. "Who's there?" "You've suffered. You've bled. You've forgotten. That is the price." "I came to find God," he said, voice raw. "I came because I was called." You are. But not all who call are holy." He froze. "You ask for wisdom. But wisdom is not given freely. Would you give more?" "I've given everything." "Not everything. You still remember why you started." "We can take that too." His head ached. A pressure building behind his eyes. "We can give you the summit. The glory. The voice of God. But we must take the last of you. Your name. Your soul. Your purpose." He staggered back. "No," he said. "I came for truth." "Then know this truth. Sometimes what calls you upward is in heaven." He left the shrine, stumbling blindly into the snow. The silence returned, but now it was alive. Watching. He no longer knew what he was climbing toward. Only that something waited at the top. Something that sounded like God. But might not be. He hadn't rested in days. Sleep wasn't an option anymore. Rest was betrayal. The kind that left frostbite in your blood and regret in your bones. He had to keep moving. One step. Then another. The logic was gone now. It was something deeper, animal, divine, or both. Something told him he had to reach the top. Had to achieve something before death took him. "Finish the journey," he whispered, voice cracking. "I started this for God. I finish it for him." But something in the wind didn't believe him. The air screamed louder than his thoughts. Voices were everywhere now, layered, shifting, crawling beneath his skin. They came from the snow. From the stone. From the silence between heartbeats. "Why are you doing this?" He staggered, tried to anchor the thought. "Where is your family?" He gasped. The snow blurred into white static. How many years have passed? He collapsed to his knees. The cold burned. His fingers were cracked open. Blood turned black. He looked down at his hands, but they no longer looked like his. Too thin. Too distant. Like they belonged to someone who had been dead for a long time. Then he heard it. A child's voice. Soft. Pure. Not like the others. "Daddy?" The man froze. The storm fell silent. "Daddy, where are you?" His breath caught in his chest. No, it couldn't be. Not here. Not this deep. He turned. There was no one. But then, there he was. A boy. Small, barefoot in the snow, glowing faintly in the darkness. His back was turned. Arms outstretched. "Daddy, come home." The man stood. Eyes wide. Legs shaking. "Don't you remember me?" Yes, he thought. "I remember. Your name is—" But the memory slipped through his grasp like melting ice. He stumbled forward, hands out, but every step the boy took was farther. Lighter. Fading. "I'm here," the man whispered. "I never meant to leave." The boy looked back. And his face was blank. No eyes. No mouth. Just a smooth oval of skin. "You gave me up for a mountain." Then he was gone. The wind returned, louder than before. A scream without a throat. The man collapsed. Clawed at the snow. Searched for breath in air too thin to hold it. He pressed his face to the ice. Closed his eyes. Whispered to God. To himself. To whatever was left. "Please let that be a dream." But the silence said it wasn't. The wind doesn't scream, it whispers. He had expected roaring gales, violent shrieks of snow tearing through his jacket like teeth. But the higher he climbed, the quieter the world became. The quieter he became. It was now the fourth or fifth night. His ribs ached. His legs were trembling sticks. His boots were soaked in blood and thawed ice, his toes blistered to pulp. He had begun chewing leather from his glove just to give his mouth something to do, to forget the hunger clawing from within. The salt of his own sweat crusted his tongue. Every step was a negotiation. Between pain and belief. Between cold and conviction. He looked back, but the world below was gone. The snowstorm had erased everything. The trees, the base camps, the firelit chapel where a stranger had once blessed his journey. The valley where he had whispered to himself, "I'm ready." Only a white void trailed behind him, as if the mountain refused to let anyone remember where they came from. The blizzard grew teeth again. It stung his face like needles dipped in acid. And yet, he smiled. A horrible, empty smile. It wasn't joy. It wasn't hope. It was just what was left. A mask made from devotion. A grin molded from nothing but resolve and frostbite. That night, he built a shelter from his own thoughts. A jagged slab of stone offered enough cover to crouch beneath. He tucked his knees to his chest, spine against the mountain's ribs, bones frozen into angles, and tilted his head back to listen.